Welcome everybody to a new analysis of Tradomics. My name is Dario, and in this video I'm going to give you an update regarding the main Chinese indexes as for the last analysis that I issued a couple of months ago. As always, we're going to use our methodology, a T-cycle analysis that has tremendous advantage over, for example, technical analysis, because at any point in time in the chart, you can statistically predict how long the price can keep falling or rising given the duration of the different cycles that you see here on the right hand side. So if you are new to the channel, I'm going to give you an example how it works. So talking about the China A50 Index, the price since October 2024 is in a flat situation despite couple of spikes here that occurred on the 7th of November 2024 and here the 9th of December 2024. And the price here is between the upper range at 14,000, roughly 40,000 Chinese yuan, and here we have the lower part um, at 12,500 Chinese yuan. When we talk about cycles, we have to study it from two different perspectives. So the downward and the upward cycles. Talking about the upward cycles here, upward cycles are cycles that are connecting top with other tops. We have a situation in which we have a first cycle, and here we can always gauge the time. So from that top here until the stop that was done on the 9th of December 2024, we have 46 bars. So 46 bar is a T plus 2 hybrid cycle, so a little bit more than a month. And then from this stop here, we have definitely a T plus 3, which is a 3 months cycle duration, that is now has done a first spike here, and potentially from this spike here we can have another cycle. Now, why is important to identify the critical swings? Because when you select the critical swings, you're able to segment the time and you're able to predict further downtrend or further uptrend accordingly. When we talk about upward cycles, when the upward cycle is concluded, then another cycle starts, another upward cycle starts, and therefore you can predict how long the price can keep retracing or pull back to the downtrend, because otherwise you don't have the shape to develop the upward cycles. So when we gauge the time in this situation from this top that occurred on the 9th of December until the top that was signed yesterday on Friday, we have a total duration of 37 bars. 37 bars is close to a maximum duration of a T plus 2, 44 bars. So here is reasonable uh, um, to forecast that from this top here we can potentially start a new at least T plus 1 or T plus 2. Okay, so in case of a T plus 1 or T plus 2, the downtrend that can occur here can vary, because a T plus 1 requires at least a couple of days of downtrend, and a T plus 2 requires at least a week of a downtrend. Okay, so if this spike will be confirmed as a T plus 2, for the next week, we might have a more further downtrend, okay? Because we need to shape this T plus 2 with a downtrend that can start the beginning of a monthly cycle. This, of course, is not confirmed yet because we need to wait the next week. But since we have 37 bars, then there are all the sufficient and necessary conditions to close the T plus 2. Eventually, what they can do is that from this top here, they can just start a weekly cycle that can have a hook to the upside and then starting a new T plus 2. And in this case, they can do it because we have 37 bars out of 44. So there is eventually time to have another hook to the upside and then start a T plus 2. But if you look at the probabilities, this likelihood is lower compared to the likelihood that the next week we're going to have a further downtrend, because 37 bars out of 44, you can calculate statistically the percentage, and of course the percentage to continue to rise for the next week rather than having a downtrend is definitely lower. So I'm gonna select the option in which we have more possibilities. So for the next week we can expect further downtrend, and if from this top we have a T+2, then the first target will be to go lower the swing, and this wing is at 12,749 Chinese yuan. Okay, so if here we have a T+2, then one of the major support will be the moving average 200. As a consequence, of course, we study also the downward cycles. So from this T+4 6-month cycle, we have had the first downward cycle, then we had a T+2 downward cycle. This is negative because the low in which it ended was lower compared to the low from which it started, and therefore we had a downtrend. Same here, we had another T+2, and now here we have a necessary duration or the necessary bars to say that from this low we have a T+2. Okay, so for the next week, I expect the beginning of next week downtrend, and this is a checkpoint to control. So if the price will reach and will go lower this low, then here we will have highly probability that this is a T+2. And if we go lower this low, then this swing needs to be in focus, and of course we have to wait what the reaction will be in proximity of the moving average 200. Another interesting thing is that we can gauge the duration of the yearly downward cycle that started here on the 18th of January 2024. It's important to gauge the total duration of this yearly cycle, because once the yearly cycle will end, then another one will start. And when there is a new T+5 downward cycle, generally we have a nice push to the upside. At the moment, the cycle has reached 269 bars. So we have a median duration for a T+5, which is encompassed between 189 to 339 bars. So eventually here there are all the conditions to close this T+5, even here, but of course they can do other cycles to attach to it, and then a return back to the uptrend. Okay, so 269 bars, they still have time to attach further um, cycles to this structure, and considering the T+4, so 6-month cycle, from this low here we have reached a total duration of 95 bars. So eventually a further impulse to the downside will um, facilitate the closing of this T+4, because we will have this T+2 until here and another T+2, negative T+2, so that the T+4 can be closed in a uh, in a nice shape. Okay, so that's what I can say about China A50. So be careful to the next week. For the SSE Composite Index, here we have a similar situation compared to China A50. But here we have had more impulse to the upside compared to the China A50. Because if you see here the lows, these have a major distance to the moving average 200 period compared to China A50. So also in this case here we have um, an upward cycle from this T+4 here that was connecting this the stop that was done on the 10th of December 2024. Total duration, you can always gauge the duration to double check, was 46 days. So also here we have a T+2 hybrid cycle. And from this top here, we have definitely the beginning of a T+2. It might be also a T+3. And from this top here to Friday's candle, we have a duration of 33, 34 bars. So here also we are seeking potentially a top, and after the top, as for China A50, we can have a downtrend. So here we have 33, 34 days. Then HFT, high frequency trading algorithm, can also give another impulse to the upside and then downtrend. So starting from next week, either we'll start having a retracement, or we will continue to go higher and then downtrend. Okay, so how can we understand in which of the two situations we are? Well, basically, you have to define a couple of checkpoints. So the first checkpoints to understand whether next week we will continue to go up or not is that the price for the next week, beginning of next week, has to go higher 3,273 Chinese yuan. So we have to go higher the stop. Otherwise, if we will start retracement, this will be the checkpoint. So at 3,203 Chinese yuan. If we gauge also the total duration, let's see from the low of the last week until here, we have 7 days. So 7 days is enough to have a weekly cycle. And that's why this swing is important, because it's the beginning of a weekly cycle. So the weekly cycle is at the moment as at 1, 2, 3, and 4 days. And then, of course, it can either go higher or can start retracing to close it between 6 and 11 days. So for the next week, there will be also, especially during the mid of the end of next week, there will be the condition to close this weekly cycle, and then we have to to monitor whether from this top here we can start a T+2 or not. So next week also for the SSE Composite Index might be more probabilities to the downside rather than the upside, but keep in mind that for further uptrend we have to go higher the stop and higher the stop. On Shenzhen Composite Index, we have a situation that resembles more to China A50, because in this case, from a graphic perspective, here we have already the top that was done on the Tuesday, 23rd of January 2025, and this top has already 1, 2, 3 bars. The last was done on Monday, 27 January 2025, so before the end of the year celebrations. And this candle was almost engulfish this green candle that was done the day before. So we have a situation in which here potentially we might have the beginning of a T+2 upward cycle. Now, it's too soon to say this is a T+2, because in order to have a T+2, we will need another 3 to 4 bars that will be lower than this top that was done at 10,411 Chinese yuan, and we will need further downtrend. So at the end of the celebrations next week, here we can foresee more downtrend. Also because if we gauge the duration from this low here, we have potentially the closing of the weekly cycle on this low, because here we have 9 bars. So if I zoom in, um, the closing of the weekly cycle can be segmented like this, or what's also happening on this low that was done a couple of days before Wednesday, 22nd of January. In terms of time, we have both conditions are valid, because on the low that we had on the 21st of January, we had 7 bars, and the low that was done 2 days later, we have 9 bars. So in this case, this low was already broken down with this candle, and therefore here we might have further downtrend. Otherwise, if the weekly cycle was concluded on this low, this candle is so close, or the closing of the last candle was so close to the minimum of this candle that um, next week will be highly probable that we're gonna go lower this low. So also here, as for China A50, I foresee for the next week more possibilities to further go to the downside rather than to the upside. So be careful. And in terms of total duration yearly cycle, let's have a look. Also here we have how many bars? We have 236 bars. So here we are a little bit lagging compared to China A50, because we have less bars from this T plus 5. Hence, they have HFT, they have enough time to do whatever they want. Okay, but I foresee for the next week a further downtrend. On CSI 300, we have similar situation. Of course, all the indexes are more or less synchronized. So from this top here, we have a 3 months upward cycle, and considering the duration, let's have a look. Here we have an upward cycle, and this upward cycle so far has reached a duration of 31 bars. So 31 bars is a median duration of a T plus 2, between 24 and 44 bars. So eventually here we have a little bit more time compared to the other indexes to um, continue in the hook towards the upside, but from this top here, potentially we have already the beginning of a T plus 1, because this top here was made of 2 bars already. So technically speaking, is more than a weekly cycle. If from this top here we have a T plus 2, then as for the other indexes, we would need to stay lower that top for longer. Okay, and this law here is already critical to understand if we're going to have a weekly cycle that will turn into a negative one. When the cycles turn into a negative one for the downward cycle, and the duration is not the minimum duration of the cycle of the grade in focus, then we can foresee more downtrend for the remaining days of the cycle in which the grade was segmented. Okay, so if, for example, here there is the weekly cycle and this low will be broken, so this low here will be broken after 3 bars, then we can expect further downtrend for at least a couple of days, because 6 minus 4 gives 2 days. But we can also foresee, statistically speaking, even a downtrend until the maximum duration, 11 days. So at any point in time, you can subtract the number of candles that we see on the chart versus the number of candle minimum and maximum to statistically predict how long the price can keep falling. Okay, so that's the quantitative methodology, and given that is based on days, then we can always have a competitive advantage, because if you take a long or short position and you know already in advance that the price will be falling or will be rising for a certain number of days, then you can stay in the trend until the minimum, medium, or maximum days to gain money. So that's really the advantage of this methodology compared to technical analysis. Okay, so for next week also, end of year celebration and the reopening of the markets, potentially here foresee more downtrend rather than uptrend. That this swing needs to be in focus. So especially if we go lower than 3,793, and this will be our second checkpoint, 3,783, then confirmed T+2 upward cycle and further downtrend. On the Seng index, we have a pretty much same situation as the other cycles. So according to the last analysis here, I was flagging the possibility to continue to the upside, and this is something that was verified. That happened, and from this low here until this low here, we had a total duration of 31 bars. So here from this low, we had a T+2 negative cycle because the low in which it ended was lower compared to the low from which it started. And from this low here, we have the beginning, of course, at least of a new T+2. But this T+2 compared to the other cycle is stronger. It's stronger because we went over already this high at 20,193 Chinese yuan. And this weekly cycle, upward cycle, is a positive one. So we have this situation here. And given that is positive because this candle was higher compared to the candle from which it started, if we gauge the total duration here, we have 5 days. So in order to complete this cycle, we need at least another bar that needs to go higher this bar. Okay, needs to go higher, 20,337 Chinese yuan. So for the next week, at the end of the celebration, we will need another bar that will be to the upside at least to close this weekly upward cycle. But in the best case scenario, we can have up to 11 bars. So this rally can continue until a maximum duration of 11 days and can continue um, until the 7th of February 2025. So this is the valuable information that you get by applying this methodology. This, of course, is the best case scenario, but can have 8, 9, or 10 days, and you can calculate at any point in time how many possibilities you have to the upside versus the downside. So the math is pretty simple here. But if you want to know more, you can write it in the comments. So we have a situation in which we are binded to the upside at least for another day, and considering the upward cycles here from this top, we will have by the next week 33, 34 or 35 bars. So depending how this weekly upward cycle will last, then we will have, of course, the median duration to begin eventually a T+2. So after the beginning of the next week, that will be more that we have more possibility to the upside. Be aware that we need a retracement. Okay, but on the Hang Seng index we have more strength compared to the other cycles. So here we have more possibilities to the upside. In terms of downward cycles, here we have from this low, we have completed the first weekly cycle. This weekly cycle lasted 8 bars. So here we can put also weekly cycle, downward cycle. And if we gauge the total duration of the yearly downward cycle from this low here, we have 239 bars. So if we start going over and or if we continue the rally and we go over this top here and also over this top here, potentially from this low we might have not just the beginning of a T plus 2, but even the beginning of a T plus 3 or T plus 4 or even a T plus 5, because here we have all the conditions to close a T plus 2 and eventually to start a new yearly downward cycle. And if we start from here the yearly downward cycle, then the first target will be this one. The second target will be this candle at 21,622, and then finally this one here at 23,241. Okay, so the Hang Seng index is in a certain way better position for the upside compared to all the other indexes. But of course, at the moment, it's too early to say that from this low here we can have a cycle that is more than a T plus 2. We have it T plus 2, T plus 3 will turn a T plus 3 into the next week because we need a certain amount of candles over this low to have a T plus 3. At the moment here we have 11 candles, so not enough. And then of course we need the second condition that um, we need also to break down some tops here to have a T plus 3 or T plus 4. But as a key message to keep it simple, the Hang Seng index has more possibilities to the upside and start eventually a new T plus 3, T plus 4 compared to the other indexes. Okay, so that's the key message. And the second key message is that at the end of the celebration, the first candles or the beginning of next week, the first candle we need needs to be to the upside. So we have to continue the rally until for 1 or 2 days at least. So that's the situation I have on the Chinese indexes. I hope this video has given you valuable information. If you need uh, um, some clarification about the methodology, feel free to write it into the comments. The best way would be to watch the introduction to the T cycle analysis that you can find on our own page on the YouTube channel. Um, so I wish you a happy Saturday and see you to the next episode.